This is a Willets Point Shea Stadium-bound 7 express train. The next and last stop is Willets Point, Shea Stadium.
Oh, yes, it is. Anthony Rivera here with you, talking about all the news and happenings surrounding that team from Queens, the New York Mets. It's a Subway to Shea series preview, and this is a big one. It's an NL East showdown between the New York Mets and the Atlanta Braves. I got my good friend here, Sam Maxwell, from the Metsian Podcast, actor, screenwriter. I mean, the list goes on and on. Musician, he does it all. You're a jack of all trades, Sam. It's been a long time. It's been a couple of seasons, I feel like, since I had you on here. But I'm happy to have you on here and grateful to do this with you today. So how you been, man?
Well, first of all, appreciate you welcoming me, Anthony. Thank you so much, and thanks to all your listeners. You're doing a great job out there. Yeah, I can remember this when it was just a bean sprout, right? So now it's a bean stalk.
Yeah, it's been a long journey. We've kind of gone through this together. You with the Metsian Podcast, me with Subway to Shea, and it's always great to just see everyone grow and all the content creators work together on different projects. And, it's just been a lot of fun throughout the years, although the Mets have not given us a lot of fun outside of 2022. But we'll see if they can turn this around. Right now, they are at 500 at 18-18. And the hope is that they can. But they have a tough task coming up this week. This homestand's very tough against the Braves and I think it's the division leading Philadelphia Phillies.
I think so. Yeah, I just pulled up the standings, and so let's confirm that. And yes, by 2 games right now, actually.
Philly has been on a hot streak.
I mean, they are 26-12. So based off of the record, they've played 4 more games than Atlanta. Atlanta is 22-12. And the Mets and the Nationals are right there at 18-18. And basically, after that miserable 0-5 start, they went 12-3, and then they've basically been teetering back and forth in what we're hoping isn't necessarily the norm for the entire year. We obviously, you have Arizona last year making it with 84 wins all the way to the World Series, but I'd still appreciate 87-90 just to be safe. And the way the Philadelphia Phillies and the Braves are going, it seems like it's going to be a dogfight at the top between those 2 heavyweights, to be realistic about it. But I still think we can make a lot of noise, and I like the makeup of this team right now, and I like the way they bounce back from some of let's call it what it is, ugly stretches.
And it's definitely not where you end at the end of the season, because you still have to make it to the trade deadline. If you could somehow make it to the trade deadline in some sort of good standing, things can change. A major trade could happen. The Mets can get a big bat or pitcher that they didn't think they were going to have at the beginning of the season, and that could launch them into a playoff position, right? We saw it in 2015. The Mets were kind of teetering. They were even under 500 at some point. And then they make the trades for Kelly Johnson, and they made the trade for Juan Uribe, and then they brought in Yoenis Cespedes, and that turned it around. And, by the end of the season, they were in first place. Not saying that that's happening here. I think it's a 2-dog race at the top for the NL East with the Braves and the Phillies, but the Mets have an opportunity to take one of those 3 spots in the wild card, and they just need to hover around there and keep it close. And they could be one of those teams at the trade deadline that makes a major move. I had this team as soon as we got JD Martinez, actually before JD Martinez, with Senga out and the possibility of him coming back in. I had them around, I want to say 82 to 85 wins. That went up when we got JD Martinez to around 83 to 87 wins. I'm going to stick with that right now, even though they've been giving us this roller coaster ride. And I talked a lot about that on the Subway to Shea podcast, which dropped earlier today. You can listen to that on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Please make sure you do. And we're going to get right into it and get into this recap of the Cardinals series. It's a short one because Wednesday got rained out, so the Mets take the first two games. First off, I want to just shout out to everybody that's in the room right now. We got 26 people in this room. Leave your comments in the chat. Leave any questions you have in the chat. Make sure you like this video as well. Also, subscribe to the Subway to Shea YouTube page. And Sam, let everyone know at the start. We'll do it at the start. We'll do it at the end. How that they can follow you and interact
For
with
sure.
you.
So the _Sam Maxwell on Twitter, X, whatever we're going to call it today. And the Metsian Pod on X, Twitter as well. Bedford Sullivan. I also, as Anthony alluded to, I'm a screenwriter, not professional yet, but my most ambitious project, I want to make an HBO style TV series about Brooklyn and the Dodgers. I've been lucky enough to interview a lot of amazing people, including Larry King and Carl Erskine, to name a couple, on the podcast over the years. So even though both podcasts are kind of on hiatus right now, especially with Bedford and Sullivan, I mean, there's 11 years of content to go back and mine through, including 4 interviews with Larry King. How lucky am I?
And rest in peace to Carl Erskine, who passed away
That's right.
last month. I think it was at the end of April. I remember we talked about that off air, and I know that you had a lot of interactions with him. You mentioned the interviews, so rest in peace to Carl Erskine. And I really hope that documentary or that show that we had talked about, I hope it gets off, because that's something that I would really be interested in watching for sure.
Thank you. And just to clarify, I want to make sure everybody understands, because a lot of people do call it, when they hear my idea, the documentary, but I want to have it basically a dramatized television series with actors, because I think that there's been documentary after documentary, book after book, but we've never been on the ground in a recreated reality, obviously, regarding that. And I think that basically every theme of both pre-war, middle of the war, and post-war, regarding this entire country, can all be told from one corner of the world, and that's Bedford and Sullivan, Brooklyn, the right field corner of Ebbets Field in Flatbush, USA. So that's what I'm hoping to do. Have a few drafts of that. And just a quick story about Carl Erskine. When I was road tripping out to Colorado, when I moved back there to help out with my dad and my sister out there, I met Carl at a Bob Evans in Anderson, Indiana, also with Jim Denny. Shout out to Jim Denny, who's an Anderson native. And he, at 90 years of age, pulled up, and I believe it was like a gray Land Rover, just pulled up like he was 30 years old. And then walked in like he was the mayor of the town, ordered some sausage, egg, and hash browns. And I got to give credit to Bob Evans. That's an underrated of those chain diners. That is really, really good, especially the one in Anderson, Indiana. So everybody go over if you're ever passing through Anderson. Not only do they have a lot of stuff dedicated in memory, unfortunately, of Carl, including a statue, but it is a cute town, and head to the Bob Evans over there as well.
Yeah, it was nice that you got to go out there and be with him, get to talk with him, especially about something that you were so passionate about, and for him to see that passion, I guess, radiate from you. I think that's such a cool moment, and just a cool feeling. I just also want to shout out here a couple of people who support the podcast. Junior Swingman, hope you're doing well. Thank you for being a part of this today. Also, Maureen, glad I was able to help and be a part of your day off. Like I said, any guys, any of you have any comments, questions, please put it in the chat. We'll make sure that we definitely check them out. And let's get into this recap of this Cardinal series. Mets win. First series since taking 2 of 3 from the Dodgers, which felt like such a long time ago when they beat the Dodgers in LA. And like I said, it was only 2 games set because it rained on Wednesday. That game gets rained out. Originally was upset about that, but then finding out that Christian Scott will pitch on Saturday when I'm in Citi Field, Makes me feel a lot better now. But we go to game one here. Sean Manaea gives us 6 innings. We've been needing length from these pitchers. He gives it to us, goes 6, gave up 3 runs, 6 hits, only 1 walk, 1 strikeout. But, we've been needing 6 innings from this rotation, and to start seeing that happen is very good. Brandon Nimmo had the game-winning home run in the 7th. He was 2 for 5, 1 home run, 1 RBI, 2 runs. The bullpen pretty much shut St. Louis down for 3 innings. Edwin Diaz, and you and me, Sam, had talked about this off air before we went on. The day before, Edwin Diaz blew that save against Tampa, the home run to Randy Arozarena. The confidence that Mendy had to go back on back-to-back days to Edwin Diaz, allow him to bounce back and get the save, I thought was very important. He was hitting 98 miles per hour on the fastball. It's good to see Edwin Diaz, be able to pitch consistently and multiple days. So hopefully that we'll see a lot more of during the season. Game 2, Jose Butto battled. That's all I could say, because he gave up 3 runs early in the game, but after that, he pitched well, and that seems to be somewhat of a theme. He struggles early, and then the middle innings, he seems to start to lock down and shut down these guys. Brandon Nimmo, he stayed hot. 3-run home run to tie the game, dead center field. He had those 3 RBIs, 1 run, 1 walk. Pete Alonso finally breaking out of his slump, 2 for 5, a home run, and 3 RBIs for him. He had that big double to give the Mets the lead. And also talked about with you about this off air, but Jorge Lopez, Reed Garrett, to me, are the anchors of this bullpen, pretty much shutting these guys down. Adam Ottavino had a little bit of a rocky save, but the Mets get the job done. They win both games against St. Louis. Sam, anything I missed here or anything that catches your eye about this series?
Keith Hernandez's collection, apparently. Gary wants him to put it all on eBay, so that's maybe something we could go down as they explore throughout the season. But no, I think you basically covered. I think I would, just because it's so fresh from what going to game 2. Jose Butto, forever he would come up and have like a shutdown 6-inning game from AAA, and we'd be like, why aren't they keeping him in the rotation? And this has basically happened for a couple years. So it's weird that I actually like that he's finally starting to not have, that the book is out on him, and that you can see that he's growing as a pitcher, and he's clearly reacting to the adjustments that people are making on him. I mean, he's got some pretty solid stuff when it's right. And you saw in those later innings the way he was striking some people out. That fastball bites. So I wanted to touch on that. I think it's like what's so crazy about the offensive season, and I do have some of the numbers up here, is that, you're getting the anchor of the offense, who should be hitting about 275 to 290, generally speaking. Pete Alonso and Francisco Lindor are both at about 210. And Lindor, however, that's a good thing, based off of what we know. Although Lindor is notorious for starting off slow, and nobody seems to remember that. In general, that he always heats up in the second half of the season. And you look at Nimmo's 229, which looks pedestrian, but he's still got that great OPS at 377. Not great, but modest. He's doing what he's supposed to do. And the slugging, he's starting to, that power that, probably he should be able to hit 15 to 20 home runs on a regular basis. And I think that we're starting, and he's hitting some big home runs. And it's continuing to be like Brandon Nimmo to the rescue, whether it's that go-ahead 4-run, solo home run to make it 4-3, or, like a propensity for 3-run home runs to tie it at 3. This is like the second or third time that he's done this year. And so it's weird to see when you look at the RBI totals that Nimmo is leading the charge at 25 RBIs. Lindor's got 20. Pete Alonso has 19, and then you got DJ Stewart at 16, Starling Marte at 15. And Beatty is getting some clutch. I'd like to see a little bit more power out of Beatty. He had a great game the other day. There's a lot to like about this offense, except for consistency. That's just what right now we're getting classic Mets pitching, right? Generally speaking, the bullpen I think is better than the starting rotation,
Absolutely.
but it's the bullpen that is it's weird to see the way in the modern age 2024 that it's seamlessly coming together. And when you need just like occasionally you'll have a couple 8-inning Omar Quintanilla. Did I really just do that? What's his name?
Jose Quintana.
Jesus, Jose Quintana. Wow, Omar Quintanilla.
Blast from the past.
It's because I'm wearing a Dickie jersey here. But yeah, just like now I'm rambling a little bit, but you get me. I think the bullpen and the starting rotation right now are working really like incongruous together, and it's a support system, and the offense is the only thing that just needs to get up to that task to make this more than just a 500 team.
And I've said this throughout the last couple of weeks. This Mets offense is consistently inconsistent, and it's been like that for a couple of years now. I hope that they can find some sort of balance throughout the season. I don't know if there's been a time where all of the major players in the Mets offense, I'm talking, Nimmo, Lindor, Alonso, you could throw you can kind of throw JD Martinez in there, but he, he's like a month behind to me when it comes to getting his offense ready. And he's batting .297. So it's been pretty decent, but I don't know if I've seen them all struggle at once. And that's what we got to start the season. Usually, you'll get Pete and Lindor having their run, Nimmo as well, and sometimes they're all together. But I don't think I've ever seen it where they're all been as bad to start the season. But I want to touch on a couple of things you said, and to start, I want to go back to Jose Butto because you mentioned not knowing if this guy's going to be a part of the rotation. I think that he has solidified his spot, to me at least, as a part of this rotation moving forward. The guy battles every outing, and whether or not, I don't know if you got to see the game that he pitched. It was Sunday against Kansas City, the Doc game, Doc getting retired, and comes out, strikes out the side in the first, had 9 strikeouts in the game. That was the most dominant I saw him. And there's been a couple starts since then. Obviously, the Dodgers start where he's had to fight and battle. They won that game. They won this game. And it's good to see this Mets offense show him some support because he's had some good games. He shouldn't be 1-2 right now. He really shouldn't. To me, he's been the most consistent of the starting pitchers because, everyone has had their good outings. Everyone has had their bad outings. And Butto's kind of just been there, like he's just been there, and to be kind of like that I guess we keep saying the word, but anchor of the rotation. And I think he will be a part of this rotation moving forward. And this is very important because we're getting to see Christian Scott come up here. Kodai Senga is getting ready to come back. We go into I don't like to go too far ahead, but we go into an off season where the Mets have to reshape the rotation again because everyone is going to be a free agent outside of Kodai Senga. So they have to bring in 4 guys. They're not going to go after Fried and Burns and all these big free agents and pay a whole lot of money. Look at what we've seen to some of these pitchers who have gotten paid and are getting hurt. We're not going to be doing that. The Mets have to be economical when it comes to pitchers. And I think the fact that Butto has come onto the scene, and if Christian Scott pitches like he did on Saturday against Tampa for a full season, I mean, obviously there's going to be some ups and downs, but if he has that bravado and is that sharp moving forward, you already have now 3 starters, and maybe you do go after one of them. Maybe you do go after Corbin Burns because you want a legit ace. I don't see Kodai Senga as an ace. He can handle it, but when you got a guy that has to have 6 days rest, that doesn't come off as an ace to me. So if they go after one big free agent, you got Kodai Senga, you got Budo, Scott, and figure out some other way to get a starter, or maybe if finally Tyler McGill puts it all together, then you got 5 starters right there. But I think Budo's here to stay. And Junior Swingman said it perfectly. He 100% agree. Budo has given the Mets a chance to win every time out, and he really has. And I was just happy to see on Tuesday that the Mets repaid him. Even though he wasn't at his best, they were able to get him the win.
Yeah, that was a great bounce back game, and that's the thing that, just as it's looking like, oh man, everything's, falling. They went and got swept and were 2 games under 500. They bounced back with these 2 wins. Obviously, a shortened series, but nonetheless, swept the Cardinals here. Yeah, I think, looking at it too, like Severino's really been coming on strong lately. I mean, those 2 games, obviously, after he lost the perfect game, it just kind of ding and dunked in. But that next game, I believe he went 8 innings in the next game, correct? Was that the follow-up? So there's a possibility that he could be working his way into a nice contract with them. Maybe they'll sign him on a 2-3 year deal. Who knows? Obviously, I'm really like going far, but Corbin Burns was the first name that popped into my head that, everybody's focusing on whether the Mets are going to be going after Soto. I think it's not a question of whether they're going to go after him. It's a question of whether they're going to get him, obviously. And
Yeah.
whatever is going on with him and the Yankees, obviously, as well. But you're absolutely right that, like, as much as like, it's like, all right, let's have David Stern settle in, retool the system with some money coming off the books, and go a little lighter, but still try to like grit it out for one season in 2024. Because I still think the Mets are surprising people, especially with the bullpen, one way or another. And then spend everything in the offseason once some money comes off the books. I think if you're going to go out and get a Juan Soto, you kind of have to pair it with some sort of pitching. Maybe at least one, if not maybe maybe like a 3, or like it's going to be very interesting to see. Obviously, we're getting way ahead of ourselves because who knows, maybe they'll be picking that pitcher up in the trading deadline, right? So when you look at this team right now, excuse me, they probably are 1 or 2 pitchers away from being really good. Obviously we're talking about that offense needing to retool, but they, and needing some consistency, but they could also be getting that coming. They could be getting some of that hitting prowess with some young, some youth coming up by the end of the year, hopefully, possibly. I haven't even checked in on some of the numbers that some of these prospects are putting up. But yeah, it's going back to what you're saying. It is nice when, like, for a fan base that has gone through the DeGrom era of no support, it's fantastic to see them back him up after he settles in. And what was it? He gave up one more solo home run. Wasn't that his, to make it 6-4 before they tacked on? Wasn't that his?
No, he only gave up 3 runs. I think it was Ottavino who gave up. I know Ottavino gave up a solo shot, and Sussler gave up a solo shot.
Yeah, that one, because the Ottavino one was after it was 7-4 because of the Pete home run. Yeah. So that was make it 7-5, and yeah, that was a rough outing, of course, by Ottavino, but he's still, again, I talk about toughening it out. Like, maybe it's just like realizing how much sometimes that I don't toughen it out. Maybe I have like really uber focused, especially like, I'm surprised it went this long without us mentioning our New York Knicks. Talk about toughening it out right now.
Oh yeah.
Like, there's just all these sports examples around me right now, Rangers as well, of toughening it out. And this isn't a Knicks podcast, so I'm going to try not to get ahead of myself. But, oh, man, what a moment last night. But
kind of almost makes you happy that the Mets game got rained out, so you could sit back and enjoy the Knicks basketball that happened. And yeah, I
Exactly.
know I did definitely enjoyed that game. But you know, talking about this offense now. You mentioned Brandon Nimmo, and Junior Swingman makes another good point. Nimmo still somehow underrated, and I was talking about this on the podcast today, and I want to get your thoughts on as well. You mentioned that Nimmo has the most RBIs on the team currently, and I'm thinking to myself, is it time to start considering moving Brandon Nimmo down the lineup in a more RBI role? Considering that he does get a lot of these big hits, whether to tie the game, to give the Mets the lead. I think eventually the Mets are going to have to consider getting I don't want to say a real leadoff man, but we know what a leadoff guy outside of walks is, right? He's getting on base, he's stealing bases. Nimmo doesn't really do that. Nimmo's looking for more power, he's looking for more home runs, he's driving in the runs. So I'm wondering if it's time to move him towards the middle of the lineup and make him be more of that impact player that can carry an offense. Maybe he's the guy that needs to go in between a Lindor and an Alonso, or Alonso and JD Martinez to split those guys up. Well, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's a great question. And just like looking at the roster, I mean, you have to think to yourself, all right, well, who goes to that top place? And, you know, uh, when I'm looking at McNeil and the way that he needs to start hitting better, basically, like get back to being a batting title champion. He's batting what, 248 right now. Maybe putting him at the top of the lineup, and I don't even know. He's tried stealing twice. Starling Marte, it seems, has the most on the team right now with 7. Um, yeah, nobody's really, and then Bader has 5, and Francisco has 4. So, like, not many people are trying to steal bases. That's not yet necessarily a part of Mendoza's game, which I think it would be nice to start seeing them, because nobody's attempted it enough to really have many caught stealings either. So I don't know in terms of McNeil and whether he could turn himself into that type of quintessential leadoff hitter. But when you think that maybe like keeping Marte in at the 2 hole, Lindor 3, Alonso 4, et cetera, et cetera, you may be onto something. You may be onto something because then everybody else down there is that better protected, and especially with somebody who, I mean, especially like a leadoff hitter that still strikes out right now more than he walks. Which, like you said, like he's trying to get the big hit. He's not necessarily trying to always get on. I don't know. It's something to consider.
Yeah, I definitely would consider some sort of switching up the lineup just to see if they can strike lightning. What is it? Lightning with a bottle, however the phrase goes. But the offense, like we talked about, has been so inconsistent that just switching it up and seeing, what if we try Marte in the leadoff spot, move Lindor up one, put in between Nimmo and Alonso, or some, I don't know, maybe the McNeil move. Maybe that'll help McNeil start to heat up.
Well, I think it's got to be stated that no matter how Alvarez wasn't tearing the cover off the ball, how everything changed once he went down from an offensive perspective. The inconsistency does kind of go to when he got injured. And I think it makes perfect sense. I mean, it's just he's so energetic, even if he's batting 236 and he's not getting on base all that much either. He's just like he's an eventual superstar as far as I am concerned. As long as he stays on the field, right? And we've seen it with, Travis d'Arnaud, who finally was able to get it together with the Braves. It's something you and I were talking about, just a tangent real quick, how like apparently a GM strategy is trolling Met fans on Twitter by having names like Jared Kelenic Travis d'Arnaud, Zach Short, who it's like Zach Short's the funniest to me. Like everywhere, like you can, like I can. Oh yeah, Guillorme. He's a very valuable commodity. Travis d'Arnaud, very valuable commodity, a hitting catcher, and one who does pretty solid job behind the plate. And I see when I was looking at it, Guillorme, who wasn't hitting a lick with them, is now an Angel. So obviously they needed some utility man, and so it was like, all right, Zach Short, sure. And I think that also brings up a point about what I like so far of this 18 and 18 season is that there's been a lot of good signs that baseball is just a business. Michael Tonkin, like I heard, had to like jump through hula hoops to get DFA'd twice in terms of like what his living situation is, where he was moving his family, putting around, and it's just it's just sucks. It's how it is, and they haven't hesitated to get rid and tinker with the roster when necessary. And I'm a proponent for Wendell immediately, but obviously it looks like they're going to have a little bit of more of a leash for that. But like that's been something that obviously has been grinding my gears, and we've talked about it on social media ad nauseum. Was how he just, for somebody brought in as a defensive replacement, he has just not looked like instinctual when it comes to his the stuff we've been egging him on about has been a lack of instincts.
Yeah, and I think too, I would not mess with the defense when you have a perfect game going on or no hitter. I don't care how good or bad the defensive players are. I don't think you mess with that I guess that aura right now, because those players on that field know what's going on. They have the mindset to not make a mistake. If they do, they do. But, now you're bringing in someone who hasn't gotten any reps on the field and now has to protect the last 3 innings, the most crucial and important innings. He has to be summoned and to be a part of that. I mean, look at when Johan Santana got the no-hitter, who was in the field. Andres Torres, who was the one that made the catch that I can't remember his name.
I mentioned somebody who was on the field earlier.
Quintanilla, yes, he was a part of that.
He was group. He was the starting shortstop. That's a trivia question. Who was the starting shortstop?
I think
Murphy even made some catches.
Murphy was at second. Duda was at first. I can't remember the guy's name that was in left field that made that catch.
Mike Baxter.
Hometown Baxter.
Kid, Whitestone's own.
Mike Baxter. Yep. And they until Mike Baxter ran into the wall and hurt himself, he wasn't coming out of that game either. So it's just
shout out to Carlos Beltran at being. I love being a part of that game in a spiritual way.
Yeah. So you know what? At some point, Wendell's going to have to prove himself, because the chopping block is very quick for Stearns. He has not messed around. You said it. Michael Tonkin twice. Johan Ramirez now on his second turn with the team, getting the Tonkin treatment. Zach Short, he's another one. And they're not messing around when it comes to, bringing up relievers, sending relievers down. And the fact that they brought in Christian Scott as early as they did, and signing JD Martinez as well.
I will also say, sorry to cut you off, but to pivot to Scott, I wasn't really able to watch many innings or video of, I just was able to see the score. I forget exactly what I was up to. What did you like the most about the pitching performance of Christian Scott that has you thrilled to see it live?
So I'll start off by saying I've always had a problem with Jeremy Hefner, and the fact that in the first inning he gave up 3 straight hits. One of them came around to score, 1-0 Tampa. But a thing that bothers me about Jeremy Hefner is he does not come out before damage is done to try to calm his pitchers down, give them a second breather, get them to, relax. Whereas he'll come in after the damage has already been done. So he didn't come out in the first inning, but Christian Scott was able to overcome those 3 hits and get the next 3 outs. On top of that, his pitch count was low all the way up until like the 5th or 6th inning. I mean, he was getting them out quick and easy. They took him out with 2 outs in this 7th inning. But at that point, he had already been up to 95. I'm pretty sure he could, if he was a more seasoned veteran, he would have been able to go. But you see him come off the mound. You see the moxie. You see the confidence oozing from Christian Scott. He was as advertised, right? We all we've been hearing about all off season, all the beginning of the season. When's it Christian Scott coming up? When is it going to be Christian Scott's turn? Adrian Hauser's not pitching well. We're going to bring up Christian Scott. When is this going to happen? I actually had a video ready to go the day before, the day after he was announced. It wasn't announced yet, but I had a video getting ready to come out on when was the right time for Christian Scott to come up. I did it with Laura Albanese, and I had to take it down. I had to delete it because they had already called him up. So the fact that they called him up when they did, if he has this staying power, be nice to see. I'm not going to get too crazy because he's going up against an elite lineup in the Atlanta Braves, and we'll see what he's really made of in this start. But if he could pitch anyway like he did on Saturday against Tampa, that's going to be very impressive this Saturday.
Yeah, that's, just thinking about for the way you were talking about it at the beginning of the podcast too, kind of reminded me of the Matt Harvey call up in 2012.
DeGrom
And,
too.
And a lot of people, DeGrom was also under the radar because when Rafael Montero got called up basically at the same time, he was the bigger prospect, infamously now. And with Harvey, a lot of people don't talk about how good he was in that first. Obviously, it's the timing is not completely. I think it also got lost in the fact that they were just collapsing in that second half of 2012 while he was pitching really well. Yeah, and I see Junior Swingman, his demeanor and poise was amazing to see from Scott. So I saw some clips from when he was in Syracuse, and he was just absolutely, you could tell that he's got command on that mound. And going to kind of just, we're going to be previewing this Braves series. I think that it gives me, in terms of Scott, I'm sure he's doing massive amounts of homework right now. I'm sure, and that's something that I think you can tell that it's all. You can tell with Steve Cohen, even though there's been some hiccups here and there, the adults are finally in charge with this team, and everybody is all about business. And that is something that you can actually start to see that there's a way coming together that is starting to be farther away from something that Kevin Pillar talked about on Foul Territory. Shout out to that YouTube channel. I'm not sure if you saw that interview, but when he was talking about the environment when he was with the Braves versus the environment when he was with the Mets, he said that the same old Mets mentality would permeate into the locker room and get to the players themselves, even though they were and talking about how many days they were in first place that first season of Steve Cohen. That eventually it was like, hey, are they right? And it's basically like, instead of doing what the Knicks are doing right now, which is proving everybody wrong and not believing the haters,
persevere.
Right, exactly. It just would seep into the toxicity. And this is where, and just thinking about what like that's really where I was kind of like, maybe we need to grow up a little bit too as fans and New Yorkers because of that whole Boogate thing. That's when I actually started to really consider like how old school and juvenile it sounds to be like, hey, this is New York, toughen up and deal with it. And it's like, we can, and look what happened with Lindor when we finally was just like, you know what, this guy's going to be here forever. Let's show him the love and appreciation that sometimes just, I personally think people just don't even see how much of a consummate professional and what he means to this team, and how we basically live or die based off of how Lindor is going in that clubhouse, basically. So I think that I forget exactly where I started with this, but like, just my point is that the whether it's Scott, whether it's anybody coming up right now, there seems to be a way forming that especially Steve Cohen, coming up at last year's trade deadline, realized he was getting away from. And I think that's basically, since then, everything has been all right. It's go time. I tinkered for 3 years. Now I got my guy. Let's go to work.
And, Kevin Pillar is not the only guy who said that, too. We've seen it from Trevor May. He's another guy that's mentioned it. Tommy Pham on his way out was not quiet, not so quiet about what had happened.
I wouldn't mind getting him back, honestly.
Tommy Pham, yeah, he was a good Met for the short time that he was here. But you know what? We talk about the Knicks. They are a great comparison. Nobody wanted to play here. Nobody wanted to play here for almost a decade and a half. We're talking, actually, you know what? 2 decades. 2 decades from the last time they went to the NBA Finals, which was 99, 2000, that like 98, 99, 2000 run that they had. Ever since that time, where they had been awfully run, awful teams put together, awful drafts. Nobody wanted to come here. Couldn't get LeBron. Had to settle for other players. This is a totally different organization right now. And that place, that MSG right now, is just booming like it's 94 again. And the Mets have to get to a point where they are back to that 84 to 89, 90 run where the place is packed, they're consistently good, and players want to come here. And hopefully we're starting to see the beginning of that after a couple of hiccups, like you mentioned. And hopefully we see something like that, start real soon. We're going to get into the preview. First, I want to get into this question from Karen Heckler. She's talking about the pitchers. What happens when McGill is ready? Will he return to the roster, or will they send someone else back to AAA? I think they're going to probably bring him up here for a 6-man rotation. And it was, I think Gorilla who said it. Senga. Oh, he has it differently though. He has Senga, Quintana, Severino, Scott, Budo, and Manaya. That'll probably be the 6-man rotation for now. So maybe right now McGill stays down in AAA. You have the depth there. I think it all depends on what happens with Adrian Hauser. He got sent to the bullpen. Can he pitch well out of the bullpen? I saw some stats, especially from my good friend from Mets Weekly, Carson, who posted Adrian Hauser's stats as a starter compared to Adrian Hauser's stats as a bullpen piece, a relief pitcher, and he has 1 point something ERA from the bullpen. So maybe this is what he needs to get that kick in the pants. He's working on a contract year, so he's going to have to play well. And if he doesn't, like we just talked about, Stearns, Cohen are not messing around. They quickly put him in the bullpen, because we know in years past that Adrian Hauser would have been, he would have been in this rotation until at least the beginning of June, and we would have had to wait for Scott. But they made no sense of wasting time, and they decided to send him to the bullpen. So he may be a guy that gets DFA'd at some point. I would assume if McGill's not up here, that someone might in this rotation get traded, like eventually, maybe a Quintana or something like that, or a Manaya or Severino, since they are free agents at the end of the year, especially if they're not playing well. If they're playing well, I don't know, but McGill will probably be the odd man out unless he becomes some sort of a long man in the bullpen and that Trevor Williams role. I don't know how that works out, but you also have David Peterson. He's also had a couple of rehab starts. He's coming back. I can
And we
see,
always forget about Lucchese too.
and Lucchese too. He can make some spot starts. I'm sure that these guys will come up and make spot starts at some point. I think the easiest path for one of these pitchers is David Peterson, as long as, I guess, for as long as Brooks Raley is out with his injury, because you can benefit from having another lefty in the bullpen. He's got a little experience pitching out of the bullpen, and maybe that's his role when he returns.
Yeah, one way or another, I mean, they've got some really great characters coming out of that bullpen, don't they? You know, like, and it's always next man up. Like Sean Reed Foley, I've been a big fan of his over the last few years too. It's, you know, I was trying to pull up some of the AAA team, but the website was kind of not not doing me right now. But there we go for the roster, just to see, because like think about like Brooks Raley goes down. Is Drew Smith injured right now?
Drew Smith's also out right now with an injury, but he should be back sooner rather than later.
Right, exactly. It's really interesting, you know, the depth that we're talking about, and I've always wanted Lucchese to settle in somehow, but it's almost similar to the Budo situation where he just comes up and pitches lights out every single time, but I guess they just don't think that he's gonna play well the more the book's out on him. I don't know. What do you think it is there that just keeps him just a depth man?
I don't know if it's something mental with him or if it's just physical, where, like you mentioned, him being able to go more innings than normal. But in spring training, we got one look at him. He had a rough start, and they quickly sent him to AAA. Like, he didn't get another opportunity, nothing. They didn't waste any time. Like, I don't know if he wasn't in shape, he wasn't ready, or what, but he got one start, and they said, nope, all right, we're sending you down. And everybody else was getting more opportunities. So I don't know what the deal is with Lucchese. I don't know how much longer he's going to be a part of this team. So that's a little bit of, you know, a concern. Maybe he'll be put in a trade or something like that. But he, you know, even let's choose probably Tyler McGill. So Lucchese's going to have to stay down there in AAA. And like, how much longer can you keep him down there? And how much more is he going to be able to stay down there for himself? So we'll see what happens with Lucchese. That's definitely someone to keep your eye on. The depth is there, right? Like, we got the depth in starting pitching right now. Got some depth in relievers. You also got, you know, some of the younger guys. We talk about Christian Scott. Mike Vassal's in the wings.
Yeah, I was about
as well.
to ask
Dom
how
Hamill.
he's doing.
Yeah, Dom Hamill is there as well. And a lot of these young pitchers are pitching well, even in the lower minors. You got Blade Tidwell, Brandon Sprout. They're not going to be coming up yet soon, but these guys are waiting in the wings. So I don't know how much more time Joey Lucchese has when he's down there in AAA.
Well, just talking about the fact that you're starting to see some pitching prospects pop up after, you know, kind of it's been, you know, like Budo, like we said, he wasn't really a prospect and he's been going back and forth. Christian's 25, so it's now or never. I think it makes perfect sense. I think he's about 25. But like all those names that you mentioned, it's just nice to see one way or another that there's a possibility this rotation could be tighter than we could even realize. And, you know, like I think that because they went to a World Series with it, you have to say that this last Generation K was much more successful than the first Generation K. But it does seem to be like every time there's this like boom of pitching prospects, it's just, you know, you have to kind of level your expectations, you know, which we couldn't do the last time. What was that? That one time all five pitched in the rotation together in like 2017. That one time, and then like somebody got injured. So, but one way or another, like you know, you and I are obviously well versed in this franchise and this how pitching rich it has been. It has won them championships. Like the outlier was 1986 in that offense. Like it's not how they generally piece together pennant-winning seasons. But we've also been craving, a Hall of Fame caliber player like David Wright, who the only reason, coming out of as a homegrown, the only reason he's not going to make the Hall of Fame is because of the injuries. And we're looking for that more consistently. And obviously we have one of them is going to be one of the biggest, we were talking about how if you're going to go after Juan Soto, you also need to be going after pitching. Totally, obviously, for a hot second, spacing on probably, the big 800-pound polar bear in the room.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens with this pitching staff and with these young kids coming up. I want to get into the series preview because this is a series preview show. I do this every time. We do this. We recap the show. We get into some Mets news, and then we spend like just a little bit of time on the series preview after I call it a series preview. So I want to get into that. First off, shout out to 67 people right now in this room. Shout out to my guy Ibby from Till Mets Do Us Part. Shout out to CP as well, who's in here. Everyone in the room. Maureen, Junior Swingman, Gorilla, who is in here. Everybody that's in here. Appreciate you, Karen. Thanks, everyone. Make sure you like the video. Make sure you subscribe to Subway to Shea. And if you're on YouTube, in the chat, there's the little emojis in the corner. If you hit those emojis and tap on those emojis, apparently it's supposed to, bring more people into the room. So do that. Let's get more people in here. And we're going to get into the series preview right now. I want to get into pitching probables with you. The Mets, the Braves. We got Jose Quintana in game 1 going up against Charlie Morton. We got Christian Scott on Saturday against Max Fried. And then Luis Severino against Bryce Elder in game 3 on Sunday. We already know the game I'm looking forward to because I'm going to be there. But Sam, which pitching matchup are you interested in the most from these 3?
It's got to be the one that it's I know it's now the trendy thing, but number 45, Christian Scott, like that number on him, versus Max Fried, who is trying to. He obviously, I think, was just absolutely atrocious the first 2 games of the year. I haven't been keeping completely up. Obviously, at 423, my guess is he settled in and had some really good starts, but hasn't been completely ace-like. And obviously, they've lost their main ace, Spencer Strider, for the year. When looking at this, I mean, considering Morton, who it's always like, oh, great, here comes that 40-year-old again.
He's handled us pretty well, though.
Yeah, they were able to kind of get to him the last time out. So I'm kind of curious. I'd like to see Quintana settle down a little bit, get that ERA down, and like I don't want, like, looking at that last Sunday game, Bryce Elder with 1-1 and a 5.28 ERA. It's just let's just stop having one of these games where they make them look like Greg Maddux, obviously, to since Braves topical. That's just like let's play him the way he should be played, which is a 5.28 ERA.
Yeah, and it sucks that it did rain because a lot of this momentum that the Mets had created, winning those 2 games in a row, hopefully going for that third one, gets taken away. Although they would have faced Sonny Gray, who kind of owned the Mets the last time he was in there. But now you go into this Braves series with a team that's at the top of the division, along with the Phillies. You really got to be careful these next 7 games. You got 3 with Atlanta this weekend. You have 2 with Philly at home, and then it's like a home and away series. They got 2 away in Philly. So the hope is to definitely play over 500 ball against these teams, but with the Phillies being so hot right now, and the Mets kind of just on this roller coaster journey, there are some concerns that I have for this team and for this roster, especially playing 7 in a row. You got to hope that this team, gets their, rotation to give you multiple innings.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, these are two offenses that are best in the league. Basically, it's the Phillies, Braves, and Dodgers right now that put a scare into you. I look back to the Braves series when we just thought like there's no way they're going to come out of this without being swept, and I guess I take solace and hope coming up that this is make or break time. These 7 games are humongous, and it's going to say a lot about who you are as a team, the way you battle the Braves and the Phillies now. And you could really kind of almost look at as Tampa Bay as almost a letdown series in many ways, because they battled the Braves well. The Pirates in Kansas City came in as just having real hot starts, handled them. So it's just the Giants. I can't do those San Francisco games. Like the only place that I'm like okay with this schedule, this crazy 2024 schedule, it is the idea that those West Coast trips don't happen more often, because I just can't stand watching them face the San Francisco Giants. Like I don't think it's the whole Dodger thing here. That like I'm okay with them facing LA. There's just something that like the Giants just annoy me. All those games out in San Francisco annoy me to no end every single year. Like it feels like it happens every single year. I know they split the series last year, but that was kind of almost like the start of the downfall of the 2023 season, was that Giants anyway, but like
that field has always been a house of horrors. You go back to 2000 when it opened, the Mets struggled there. I don't even think they won a game there, and until they won that one game in the playoffs,
right.
which was I think game 2 that they almost even lost. They almost lost that game.
Right.
Yeah, so going at least they got it out of the way early, right? They got the Dodgers out of the way early, and they got San Francisco out of the way early. Only will have to go back now. They got to deal with, I guess, San Diego, Colorado, Arizona, and then that's it for the year. I don't know how that schedule plays out. I haven't looked that far ahead, but at least Giants are done, Dodgers are done. And look at what's happening with the Dodgers now. They got on into a hot streak. So at least we caught them at the right proper time, was able to take 2 or 3 from them, because I think it would be a totally different story to say if we played them this weekend.
Yeah, that's a good point. Since I still have the standings, I wouldn't mind checking that one again. Yeah. Oh my God, Jesus. And like they're the Padres, just padreing out as always, almost like us in many ways, but there's something like equally like seeing them 2020. It's just like, and I also got a chuckle that Boston is now 19-18, which is of course is a big year always for the Red Sox.
They've had some good pitching this season. They've had some really good starting pitching. So, kudos for them for in what is always a tough division to play in. United that you have obviously the Yankees are back to being a top team in the league. Baltimore has kind of taken that throne now, and then you never know with Tampa. You never know with Tampa, although the Blue Jays seem to be more of pretenders than players. But I'm going to throw some matchups at you. See what you think. JD Martinez, we'll start off with him. In 35 at-bats against Charlie Morton, 371, 1 home run, 1 RBI, 885 OPS. So that's a matchup to consider locking into on Friday. I try to get some players that have more than 12 at-bats against some of these pitchers to really gauge what's a solid matchup. And JD Martinez, who does not have a home run yet on the season, hopefully he can start hitting for some power in this. We'll talk about another Mets power bat later on. But a guy you always have to watch out for. We're not just going to talk Mets, but the Braves as well. I can't stand him as a person, but Marcell Ozuna, 458 batting average, 1 home run,
Ooh.
7 RBIs,
Oh my God.
1.186 OPS in 24 at bats against Jose Quintana. So Jose Quintana is really going to have to nibble around the plate when he faces off against Marcell Ozuna.
Up and in first at bat.
There you go. Get him off the plate.
And I don't know exactly who it's been, but that happened with some of these. Again, like when I'm talking about with this bullpen, I'm gonna digress real quick, but like next man up, you'll see somebody who just got called up from AAA come up and into some of these batters right away. But anyway, it's like it kind of went. It stopped. During the Buck era, we were talking ad nauseum. They would just constantly get hit, and we'd just be like, don't start hitting people. Yeah, don't start hitting people. Just come up and in. And so when I see this matchup, I mean, like that is certainly 24 at bats, not something to sneeze at. And Quintana knows this. Everybody knows this. Going back to JD Martinez, 35 at bats. Morton knows this. I'm curious, going back to the JD matchup with Morton, how many times, because what was so interesting about this one is 1 home run, 1 RBI for that 371 batting average. So I'm kind of curious as to how often he's come around when Morton's on. And so with this, I would like to see, like taking advantage of that batting average and how well you're seeing the ball. But like you said, start driving the ball a little bit more as well with that 297 batting average. Hey, he's come right in. Unfortunately, obviously broke Contreras' arm the other day. Not to get too deep into it, but that's it. It happens. I think he was reaching out a little too far, but it's just.
It was a little bit of both, right? Like
it's a little
JD
bit of
Martinez
both, right?
is always farther back when he had bats. Contreras was a little too far up, and there's an article out. I reposted it this morning. I can't remember who wrote it. It's on Twitter, but someone from The Athletic wrote, and I think that she covers the Cardinals, how catchers now are standing closer in the plate so that they can steal strikes, something that Francisco Alvarez has done a lot this season, and he also got hit in the hand earlier on in the season. Not the play that kind of got him out for the 6 to 8 weeks, but he did get hurt a couple of days earlier for reaching and trying to get a strike, and that's what these catchers are doing. They're trying to steal strikes, and they're putting their arms in. That was a full-on swing on Contreras' arm, a full-on swing. And I'm not faulting JD Martinez because it's just in the game. Like, I mean, I don't know how you prevent something like that. Or like, you can't set so many boundaries. Like, we've already seen the thing at home plate. We got the thing at second base. It's getting a little bit out of hand. And, if these guys are reaching for strikes, they're going to get themselves hurt. And this guy, he broke his forearm. It's crazy.
God. Yeah, it's nuts. I'm sure they can try to figure something out. Maybe not regulate it, but just instruct it, if that makes any sense. That I think is the way to go, because at some point it's going to become just overkill with some of these rules to protect players. And although give props to Narvaez for schooling the Cubs on how to do it the night after night after that crazy call.
Twice.
I keep going back, but yeah, twice. Right. Twice. It happened twice. That's called a clinic, if you will. So that's Tom Amansky stuff right there.
Oh yeah.
Tom Amansky reference.
Tom Amansky and Fred McGriff.
A lot of kids out there might not remember Tom Amansky.
Hey,
we do.
The Crime Dog represented it, so it's got to be good, right?
Exactly. It's got to be good.
I got one more matchup for you. This is a good one.
Okay.
A little more from the Mets here. Pete Alonso, 34 at bats against Max Fried, 294 batting average, 2 home runs, 7 RBIs, 885 OPS. We're talking about Pete Alonso, who needs to kind of get himself going. He's in this deep slump. The body language is not there. He had a good game on Tuesday against the Cardinals, getting that double that we talked about earlier, getting the home run in the 9th inning, something to get him going. If he can continue it, especially in such an important series against the Atlanta Braves, I think that's a big move for the Mets there. And I just like to see Pete get back. I was there for his 200th home run of the season. I like to see him hit another one against Max Fried. And I think the Mets have pretty much handled Max Fried pretty well. No, is it? I think they have.
I'll try to pull it up as fast as possible.
Or was it Strider?
Now.
I couldn't remember if it was Strider or Fried that they've handled pretty well.
Strider, I could see Strider us just having issues with him, but I'll see if I can pull up the matchup real quick. But I think that just looking at that Pete, I agree. And for a little while in the mid, I forget whose name was just up there, but
Maureen.
Yes, there we go. You said Maureen?
Yeah.
Yes, I wholeheartedly concur, Maureen, because for a second I thought it was going to be the Nationals. And I think now that we're settling into this new decade after the Nationals kind of had the decade last, with being the main rivalry with us last decade, I think just because of that 30-year history and always having our number, even though we obviously would have some, obviously the 10-run 8th inning is the one that I always think of as the highlight of the rivalry. It's got to be the Braves. And it's like I also have this, my freshman roommate was a Phillies fan and kind of helped be a part of the conversion from Yankees to Mets for me. So I feel as if because of you always have both family, friends, there's a lot of overlap. They're both very blue collar fan bases. So the Phillies, obviously, there's a lot of people out there that think maybe this is blasphemous, but I think anytime the Phillies are battling the Braves, it's just no question who I'm rooting for. Not even rooting less than or whatever, however you want to phrase it. It's what was that?
Rooting for a rain.
Root for a rain out, right? Exactly. But at that particular also because I want my friend to be happy at that time. As much as I hate the Phillies, I like my friend. I love my friend. So I appreciate when he's watching some good baseball. And last year, he was drinking a little bit of whiskey on the rocks at the end of that Phillies championship series. It's just, but when it always comes down to it, as long as it's not the Braves, and as long as it's they still to right now, we have 95 and 2021. And other than that, they're settling into the same thing over and over again, yet again. So
yeah,
let's take, and also I don't think we're going to get it this year, but I would also just 2022 was such a missed opportunity because we've never won a division like that. And one day I just want to beat the Braves to win a division like that. Like we should have done in 2022.
Yeah, because you look at 2006 when they won the division, they pretty much won it outright. It was a runaway. So
and both 86, 88, I think was a runaway as well. Pretty much obviously, but they ended up running away in 69, even though that was a giant comeback because they were trailing for a while, and 2015, right? But what was it, 7 games by the end, and that was because of a series that that final series in Washington. I was at both the 8-run comeback where Kurt Neuenhuis, and also the Cespedes game. It was wonderful. Just and oh God, that's still my favorite team of all time. It's hard to not just gush when you're talking about the 2015 squad.
Oh yeah. Rosie Kate brings up a good point. The Mets pitching and offense are deeply concerning. Will be interesting to see how they handle the Braves and the Phillies. Well, I'm going to give you some players to watch, Rosie K, for the Mets this season. We'll do offense. We'll do a pitcher, a starting pitcher, and a relief pitcher. We're starting off with hitting. We started off talking about this guy. He's the leadoff guy. He's Brandon Nimmo. He's got 2 home runs, 7 RBIs, 4 walks, a 1.132 OPS in his last 7 games. What more is there really to say about Brandon Nimmo? We talked about him coming up clutch with big hits. Sam has mentioned all the RBIs that he has leading the team. So Brandon Nimmo is definitely that guy to watch out on offense to see if he can carry some of that over. Obviously, the Mets will be facing 2 right-handed pitchers on Friday and Sunday. So see if he can get a little thing going on there. Fried will be on Saturday. So I don't know. I assume that he'll be in the lineup anyway, or maybe they give him a rest and put Bader and Tyrone Taylor in there, but we'll see. With Brandon Nimmo on offense, going into starting pitching, it's got to be Christian Scott, right? He's going to be facing this lineup for the first time. We talked about it. 6.2 innings pitched, 5 hits, 1 earned run, 1 walk, 6 Ks, 94 pitches in his MLB debut. I think he's going to labor a little bit in this game. We've got some really good Braves players in that lineup. The list, Acuna, Albies, Riley, unfortunately, Osuna, right? We don't like him, but he's one of those top players on that team. Darno has been hitting well against us. So
and just to throw it out, since we're talking about pitching as well, Max Fried is 5-2 with an ERA of 2.35 and 47 strikeouts and 9 appearances against the Mets. Oh, it also says at home, so I would need to. That just says home, but he's pitched well at least in Braves territory.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens on Saturday. Maybe it's good that this lineup has not seen Christian Scott yet, and it'll be to the Mets' advantage. Whereas with a guy like Jose Quintana, they've seen him. Marcell Osuna's seen him and given him trouble. But we'll see what happens when Christian Scott takes the mound on Saturday. Very excited to be in the house for that. And my player to watch out of the bullpen, Reed Garrett, over the last 8 1/3 innings pitched, he's got 11 Ks. He's 2-0 with a 1.08 ERA. I've kind of been waiting for the shoe to drop. I've said this a couple of episodes. I've kind of been waiting for the shoe to drop on Reed Garrett because, he's been kind of that journeyman type player that we've seen come through the Mets bullpen year after year. This is different, man. This is something totally different. He goes out on Tuesday, was it Monday? I don't remember which game he came out in, but man, he had a filthy pitch to end that inning. I
think it was Tuesday because it was basically Jorge. What was it? Jose Lopez. Excuse me. Jose Lopez had a great shutdown. Got out of a jam in that inning, and then the next inning, I believe Reed Garrett did the same thing. He is the story of the bullpen, as good overall as the bullpen has been. His attitude, he seems like a winner to me, right? Everybody, again, I was singing the praises of this pitching staff. Everybody seems to be buying in to shutting hitters down, no matter, and also not being afraid of these lineups. Just go after these guys. You're a major leaguer. And as long as it's generally speaking, if you watch this game enough, how often can you really say, wow, the hitter really beat a good pitch? A lot of times these hitters are good at recognizing mistakes. A lot of times you're like, oh, that changeup was over the middle. No wonder he just smacked it to Kingdom Come. So if you're going after these guys, if you are fearless to whatever degree just adrenaline can make you, and you got some bite on your pitches, you should be able to beat anybody, no matter how good any hitter is. I can think of like that crazy inning in 2015 where Lucas Duda, where we hit 3 home runs to finish the sweep against the Nationals, and Duda brought it all the way into his chest and hit it to the Pepsi porch or whatever it was called at the time. that is a good example of how in the world did he go get that pitch, right? Like, so generally speaking, I think good pitching will beat good hitting. We see it in the playoffs. We see it. So keep coming after these guys. Don't be afraid. And just to throw this out there, tangenting back to the Cardinals series, Paul Goldschmidt is just completely lost right now.
Yeah. Look, we talk about Pete Alonso. Look at what's happening with Paul Goldschmidt, man. He is completely lost at the plate to the point where, every time he would come to at bat in years past, I was very worried. And he made the Mets pay. And, going into last series preview, looking at his stats against the pitchers that the Mets had, he was pretty good against all those pitchers, and he was non-existent in this series. So the Mets caught a break, that's for sure.
Oh, for sure. And like some of the pitches that he was swinging at, like it basically the pitchers were like, all right, this will either be ball 2 or a strikeout, because this guy's, what he swung at on that last pitch in one of these innings the other day, it was just it was crazy. So and just
Medina posted it. Goldschmidt is 38. I think Father Time is beating him.
Yeah. Well, it's been a stretch of like 20 at bats, of course, and I haven't looked at his overall numbers. Just to finish on Max Fried, it's an overall 265. So maybe you're right about Spencer Strider.
It might be Spencer Strider that they have better luck against.
But look, again, Max Fried might be a different pitcher right now.
Yeah. Yeah, you never know. You never know what you're going to get from this team that could catch the Mets on a hot streak, and maybe they're able to solve the issue. I would throw Bader in the lineup there. He usually hits lefties very well. Maybe have Tyrone Taylor in the lineup as well, who seems to make the most of his opportunities. So I would like to see him in the lineup. Obviously, Pete's going to be in there. Lindor's going to be in there. JD Martinez. So you have a lot of good right-handed bats to counteract with Max Fried. It's just the execution that needs to take place. And especially with a guy like Pete Alonso, who's coming off that miserable slump he has, something that we haven't seen since he got hit in the wrist last year and came back way too early. He went on a slump right after that. So hopefully Pete gets himself going. Hopefully this offense, if they're going to find any consistency, please do it during this homestand. I'd appreciate it very much. Thank you.
And also big shout out to Ultimate Mets Database for providing that Max Fried stuff immediately.
Yeah, absolutely. Sam.
Hey, easy for Max was my father, but easy Freudian slip considering we were just talking about Max.
Yeah, we have Max on the mind, but Sam, I can't thank you enough for sticking out with me for now. We're on like an hour and 17 minutes. I appreciate you doing this. Like I said at the beginning, make sure to let everyone know what you're working on, where they can follow you and interact with you.
You can follow me on at @the_Sam Maxwell on Twitter. I'm also on Instagram, Sam Maxwell9. That is occasional Mets stuff, but really it's just my personal Instagram page. And also, I once made an amateur movie about the Mets fan. It's called The Newest Breed: A History and Guide to the Mets fan. It's in 2 parts on my YouTube page. All you got to really do is type in Sam Maxwell Mets and it should pop up. And Greg Prince, Faith and Fear in Flushing, as well as the Chapman family are the fans that kind of act as the overall Mets fan incarnation for telling the full story of not only the team, but the fan base itself.
Awesome. Greg Prince is a good friend to Subway to Shea as well. I've had him on in the past as well. Met up with him at QBC in this, I think it was December. I think it was December, end of November, beginning of December. One of those, in that time frame. But I got to meet him in person. A great guy. I think he was giving an award. I think he was giving an award to the Shea family. I think I have to go back and look.
Yeah, probably the Gil Hodges Award, most likely.
Yeah. So I he's such a great guy, great with history, especially with this Mets organization,
Incredible.
and great to have him on. Sam, like I said, awesome having you on. We're going to do this again. We have a full season worth of series previews to
Exactly,
talk about.
man.
So
Yeah,
I'll definitely have you on.
Whenever you want, I'm here. This has been a blast. And honestly, this was also my inaugural video podcast. So thank you for that.
Got to be the first one to have Sam Maxwell on.
Exactly.
So
There you go.
Appreciate you. As regards to Subway to Shea, make sure you have liked this video. Make sure you're subscribing to the YouTube page. You can catch the latest episode of Subway to Shea, which dropped this afternoon. That's on Apple Podcasts and Spotify with my friend Tone, aka Mets Trucker. He has his own podcast out as well. Talked about all the latest stuff happening with the Mets, some of the stuff we covered here as well on this video. I will be coming up at 9 o'clock. The show never ends. So right after this, I'm heading on to the Mets Evening Brew on the Morning Brew Sports Network. You can catch them on their YouTube page. And I think we're going to be taking calls as well on the show. So if you want to join in the chat, if you want to join in and be on video, you can do that as well. Just make sure you are on the Morning Brew Sports Network page for the Mets Evening Brew with myself, Eddie Presti, and Al Cintrone from WFAN. So make sure to check us out. But this has been a lot of fun. Again, Sam, thank you so much. Thanks to Maureen, Yamid, Junior Swingman, everybody that's a CP, Matt, Gorilla, Karen, everybody that's been in here. Appreciate you all. If you are going to watch this later, you can. It'll be up for the entire series. Actually, it's just going to be up. This will be up. You guys can watch, go back, fast forward, whatever you got to do. A great way to end this. Let's put the Braves in a buyback this weekend. Great way to end the show. We got to beat them. I mean, it's plain and simple. We got to stick around.
Tomahawk chop them, huh?
There you go. Tomahawk chop them. But for Anthony Rivera, for Sam Maxwell, this has been a Subway to Shea series preview. And as I always end it with, let's go Mets.
Let's go.